I can't wait to hear more. Will you read to us?
Sure. As a matter of fact, what I'll do is I'll read the it's a short scene, and it's the scene where he is making the video that he sends to the director of the FBI. And so this is one of the last things he does before he dies, because he knows that one day it's coming. So he's in his apartment in Monaco when this scene takes place. His name is Gustavo Toro. Gustavo Toro settled into the black leather chair and focused on the camera's lens. He had taken the time to adjust it on a tripod. He didn't want a view of the ceiling or an odd angle that put half his face out of the frame. No, he wanted to do this only once, so he made sure everything was set up right. "If you're watching this, I'm dead," he began. "And others will be soon if you don't act fast." He paused to let that sink in. Having dealt with the FBI during his career, he understood that they would need a good reason to spend time, money, and resources on a case brought to them by a solution specialist, a term he'd come up with for what he did. He wasn't just a killer. After all, sometimes the problem person needed to remain alive after they were persuaded to cooperate. The Bureau was like a steam engine, though, and once they got going, they were an unstoppable force that would plow ahead until they reached their destination. He didn't like them, but he respected them in a way a diver respects a shark. "This video is for the director of the FBI," he continued. "And by now, you know who I am and what I do." He assumed the flash drive his attorney provided would end up on the director's desk, accompanied by a dossier. After all, he'd done his own research on the one who currently held the position, Thomas Franklin, and figured him for an all-business, no-bullshit kind of guy. Not fun to have a beer with, but exactly what the situation needed. He also learned Franklin was in his second year of a 10-year term of office. If Toro lived that long, he would have to evaluate the next director and adjust his plans if needed. But for now, Franklin was at bat. The camera's glowing red light brought him back to the task at hand. "I've got information to share with you, but you'll have to earn it." Part of his research had been to find the right bait for his hook, and Franklin seemed the type to rise to a challenge. What Toro was doing now was pure manipulation, but he was out of options. If he was dead, the FBI was his only shot. "In my line of work, you can't be too careful." He gave his head a small shake, aware of the irony of the situation. "The fact that you're watching this means I wasn't careful enough." For an instant, Toro wondered who would be the one to kill him. The list of possibilities was long, but at the top were Denton Foley and his boss, if they ever found out what he'd done to them. Toro had heard a few whispers that Foley was jealous of him, but he hadn't taken it seriously. Foley was the boss's top enforcer and most trusted employee, yet somehow he had come to view Toro as a threat. As he prepared to make a case for his unseen audience, he reflected that it wasn't Foley, but an entirely different set of circumstances that had prompted him to this desperate scheme. A totally unanticipated situation had thrown his life into chaos as it brought everything into sharp focus. And now his top priority was recruiting the FBI with bait they couldn't resist. To do that, he would have to bare his soul, admitting ugly truths about himself. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit to the end of the scene. He stared into the lens and for once allowed his emotions to show in his normally tightly controlled features. "Now that I'm dead, the clock has started ticking. Time's running out. If you're up for the challenge, click the button." For the 1,000th time, he reflected on his plans. There was a ton of risk, but he couldn't see a better way to go about it. A dead man's options were few.